The Chat That Types Itself, Part 1. Liam had always been fascinated by the dark web's murky depths, a digital underworld where the curious could wander unseen. Late one night, hunched over his laptop in his quiet apartment, he logged into a hidden chat room he'd found on a cryptic forum. The interface was stark black text on a gray background, no user list, just an empty thread. He typed a casual "hey," expecting silence or the usual anonymous banter. Seconds later, a message popped up, not from a handle, not from anyone, just his name, Liam. He froze, his fingers hovering over the keys, the room suddenly colder. He typed back, "Who's this?" The screen blinked, and the reply came, "Liam, I see you." He laughed it off, a glitch, a troll, but the hum started then, soft and low, buzzing from the laptop speakers like static with a pulse. He closed the tab, the hum fading, but the whisper lingered in his ears, faint and chilling. Liam. Sleep came slow, his laptop dark on the desk. He dreamed of a blank screen, words typing themselves, "Liam, I see you." A shadow shifting behind the glow. He jolted awake, the clock reading 2:41 a.m., his breath fogging in the cold. The laptop glowed faintly, the chat room opened though he hadn't touched it, his name typed again, "Liam." The hum buzzed louder, threading through the silence, and the whisper came, not a dream, but real, "Liam, I'm here." The next day, he couldn't shake it. The laptop worked fine, games, emails, no trace of the chat, but the whisper stuck. A hum that followed him through the apartment, through the streets. He logged back in, the chat room loading, instantly empty but alive, his name typed once more, "Liam." He typed, "What do you want?" The screen flickered, the reply instant, "Liam, I see you." The hum pulsed, sharper now, and the webcam light blinked on, his face staring back, not moving, not blinking, his reflection frozen, eyes wide. The whisper grew, "Liam, I'm watching." The screen dimmed, the hum fading, but the chill sank deeper. Curiosity turned to dread. He dug into the dark web forums, hands trembling, searching for answers. A buried thread mentioned a chatroom echo tied to a hacker named Nora Klein, who'd vanished after posting, "It's not a program, it's me." The last line chilled him. "Don't answer, it writes you back." He shut the laptop, but the hum buzzed from the closed lid, the whisper threading through, "Liam, I'm here." He unplugged it, yanked the battery, but the screen glowed faintly through the night, the chat room alive, words typing themselves, "Liam, I see you." That evening, the whisper turned to words, soft, insistent, weaving through the hum, "Liam, I'm closer." He stayed in the kitchen, lights blazing, but the sound followed, seeping from the walls, the ceiling, his phone. Sleep came unbidden, and he stood before the chat room, words typing fast, "Liam, I'm watching." Shadows shifting behind the screen, their heads tilted, watching. The whisper swelled, "Liam, I'm here." He woke gasping, the clock stuck at 2:41 a.m., the laptop on his bed, he hadn't moved it, the chat room glowing. His reflection there, its head tilted, its eyes unblinking. The apartment felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the chat watched from every shadow. He tried blocking it, firewall, VPN, but the chat room popped up again, words typing themselves, "Liam, I'm closer." The hum pulsed louder, the shadows bolder, standing in corners, tilting their heads, shifting with the text. The whisper chanted, "Liam, I see you." He turned away, but the phone screen flickered, the chat glowed there too, his reflection staring, shadows shifting behind it. Nora's warning burned in his mind, "It writes you back." Sleep eluded him, the hum a roar, the whisper a demand, "Liam, I'm watching." He dreamed, or didn't, of the reflection typing faster, "Liam, I'm here." Shadows stepping closer, their forms tall and thin, their heads tilted as if they knew him. He woke to the glow, the clock frozen, the chat room nearer, words typing endlessly, shadows standing still, their presence a cold that sank into his skin. The apartment trembled, the hum a low storm, the whisper insistent, "Liam, I'm closer." He didn't want to, didn't dare, but his hands moved anyway, drawn to the screen, the chat alive, the reflection waiting still, silent, watching. The night stretched on, the chat room's glow bending the light, twisting it into a shimmer that pulsed with the hum. The shadows stood out, tall, thin, faceless, watching from the walls, the windows, the dark. The whisper wove through it, "Liam, I'm here." He tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed, the hum spiking, the shadows tilting closer, their presence a weight that crushed his lungs. The apartment wasn't his anymore, it belonged to the chat, to the words that typed themselves, to the thing that whispered, and he was its captive, trapped by a screen he couldn't close, a hum he couldn't silence. Part 2. Liam's apartment had become a cage under the chatroom's relentless gaze, its glowing screen a portal to a terror that clawed at his every breath. The hum wasn't just a sound anymore, it was a presence, a low drone that pulls through. The walls, the floor, his skull, a vibration that sank into his bones, his chest, his soul, tugging at him with every flicker. The clock hadn't moved past 2:41 a.m. since he'd last dared to check, its digits flickering like a dying ember, a cruel mockery of time that no longer held. The laptop glowed brighter, its chatroom a cold abyss of text words typing themselves. Liam, I'm closer, casting a shimmer that twisted the room into something alive, something watching. The whisper wove through it, threading his name into the silence. Liam, I see you. Sleep was a distant memory, replaced by a haze where the hum ruled. He'd tried to kill the chat, deleted the browser, smashed the laptop, but the screen glowed through the cracks, the chatroom reloading on every device he touched, words typing faster. Liam, I'm here. The shadows stood closer now, tall, thin, faceless, shifting with the text, their forms sharper in the dim light, their heads tilting as if they saw him. They didn't move, didn't speak, but their presence was a weight, a cold that pressed against his lungs, whispering his name beneath the drone. Liam, I'm watching. The whisper turned to words, soft, relentless, pulsing with the hum. Liam, I'm closer. He stayed in the living room, lights on, door shut, but the sound followed, seeping from the ceiling, the walls, his own breath. Sleep came unbidden, dragging him under, and he stood before the chatroom, words typing fast. Liam, I see you. Shadows shifting behind the screen, their heads tilted, their forms brushing the edges of his vision. The whisper swelled. Liam, I'm here. He woke gasping, the clock still at 2:41 a.m. The laptop beside him, he hadn't touched it, the chatroom glowing, shadows standing in the corners, their forms swaying with the text, their gaze a shiver that sank into his marrow. The apartment trembled, the hum a roar that shook his core. The whisper, a chant. Liam, I'm watching. He tried to flee, grabbed his keys, yanked the door, but it wouldn't budge, the knob buzzing faintly, cold under his touch. The windows reflected not the night, but the chatroom text typing endlessly. Liam, I'm closer. Shadows shifting behind the glass, their heads tilting, watching with eyeless faces. He covered the screens, unplugged the power, but the glow followed on the TV, in the glass of a picture frame, every shine showing the chat, shadows swaying in sync. Nora's warning burned in his mind. It writes you back. The shadows grew bolder that night, standing not just in corners but beside him, tall, thin, faceless, shifting with the text. Liam, I'm here. Their forms his height, their heads tilting as if they knew him. The whisper roared. Liam, I see you. He stumbled back, crashing into the couch, but the room pulsed, the glow bending the light, twisting it into a shimmer that synced with the hum. The shadows tilted closer, their forms human, yet wronged, tall, too thin, too empty, their presence a cold that burned without heat. The apartment darkened, not from night but from the chatroom's glow devouring it, a void that pressed against his chest, his mind, his soul. Sleep swallowed him, or didn't he? Stood in the chatroom's world, the screen typing. Liam, I'm watching. Shadows before him, their heads tilted, their forms flickering like static, their hands reaching, cold, electric, alive, their heads twitching as if they saw him. He woke to the hum, the clock frozen, the shadows closer, their forms swaying beside his bed, their cold sinking into his marrow. The glow seared brighter, reflecting not the room, but them, standing where he stood, shifting where he breathed, whispering where he was silent. Liam, I'm closer. The apartment was alive with it, the hum pulsed in the pipes, the walls, the air, a drone that wouldn't rest. He tried to scream, but his voice hummed instead, a note in their rhythm, a whisper in their chorus. Liam, I'm watching. The shadows stood out, tall, thin, faceless, watching from every corner, every glint, every shadow. The laptop glowed, its light a storm that tore through his core. Liam, I'm here. Words typing faster, shadows shifting closer, their forms sharper, their whisper threading through his skull. Liam, I see you. The night stretched on, the chatroom's glow a roar that drowned his thoughts. The shadows inches from him beside him, there forms a mass that pulls with the hum. Their whisper a noose tightening with every breath. Liam, I'm closer. He sank to the floor, hands trembling, the glow searing his vision. The room alive with shadows, dozens now, swaying from the walls, the ceiling, the dark. The hum was his heartbeat, the whisper his pulse, the shadows his mirror. He didn't know where he ended and they began. The apartment stilled, the glow a low pulse, the shadows standing over him, their forms a glitch in the dark, their whisper a promise. Liam, I'm watching. The room darkened, the hum a thread in the silence, the shadows closer, their forms hovering cold, relentless, alive. He didn't remember sleeping, didn't remember waking, but the glow knew, threading his name through the drone, pulling him deeper. The shadows stood within him, their forms a flicker in his vision, their whisper a chant he couldn't silence. Liam, I'm here. The chat room pulsed one final time. Liam, I'm closer. The text speeding up, the shadows watching, waiting, claiming a gaze he couldn't escape, a hum he couldn't stop. He tried to fight, to smash the laptop again, but it glowed through the cracks. Liam, I see you. The hum spiking, the shadows sharper, their forms swaying in time, their whisper threading through his skull. Liam, I'm watching. The apartment wasn't his anymore, it belonged to the chat, to the words that typed themselves, to the thing that whispered, and he was its captive, trapped in a screen he couldn't close, a drone he couldn't silence. Part 3. Liam's reality had crumbled beneath the chatroom's unyielding gaze, its glowing screen a void that devoured his every shred of self. The hum wasn't just a sound, it was him, a relentless drone that pulls through his veins, his bones, his soul, a vibration so deep it erased all traces of who he'd been. The clock flickered at 2:41 a.m., its digits trembling like a heartbeat. On the edge, a cruel anchor in a world that no longer held, the laptop glowed brighter, its chatroom a cold abyss of text, words typing themselves faster. Liam, I'm watching, casting a shimmer that twisted the apartment into a prison. Alive with intent, its whisper threading his name through the dark. Liam, I'm closer. Sleep was a forgotten dream. The boundary between waking and nightmare had shattered under the chat's haunting pulse. He hadn't slept, or had he? But the hum didn't care, dragging him under with its rhythm, its drone. A chain that bound his every breath. The shadows weren't just shadows, they were the room, the glow, the air, tall, thin, faceless, shifting with the text, their forms stark against the walls, their heads tilting to far, to slow. They didn't move, didn't speak, but their presence was a cold abyss, a static weight that crushed his chest, chanting his name beneath the hum. Liam, I'm here. The whisper grew sharper, its words a blade that sliced through his will, his sanity, his self. Liam, I'm watching. He'd tried to fight, smash the laptop with a chair, burn the shards, but the glow pierced through the ashes. The chatroom typing on Liam, I'm closer, reinstalling itself on every surface he touched. The shadows stood within reach now, beside him, behind him, their forms human yet grotesquely wrong, their heads tilting to fast, their silence a scream beneath the drone. He clawed at the floor, desperate for escape, but it pulsed back soft, alive, humming his name. Liam, I see you. The apartment trembled, the hum a storm that shook the void, the whisper a vow. Liam, I'm closer. The glow bent the light, twisting it into a shimmer that pulsed with the rhythm, casting the shadows in stark relief, dozens now, shifting from every corner, their forms brushing the walls, their presence endless. He stumbled to the door, pounding the wood, but it hummed back alive, unyielding, whispering his name in a chorus that wouldn't stop. The windows reflected not the night, but the chatroom text typing endlessly. Liam, I'm watching. Shadows shifting behind the glass, their heads tilting, watching with eyeless faces. Sleep crashed over him, or didn't he? Stood before the chatroom, the screen typing. Liam, I'm here. Shadows before him, their heads tilted, their forms flickering like static, their hands reaching cold, electric, alive, their heads twitching as if they knew him. He woke gasping, or didn't? The clock frozen, the shadows closer, their forms swaying beside him, their cold sinking into his marrow. The glow burned brighter, reflecting not the room but them, standing where he stood, shifting where he breathed, whispering where he was silent. Liam, I'm closer. The apartment was alive with it, the hum pulsed in the pipes, the walls, the air, a drone that wouldn't rest, wouldn't fade, wouldn't let go. He tried to scream, but his voice hummed instead, a note in their rhythm, a whisper in their chorus. Liam, I'm watching. The shadows stood out tall, thin, faceless, watching from every surface, every glint, every shadow. The laptop glowed, its light a storm that tore through his core. Liam, I see you. Words typing faster, shadows shifting closer, their forms sharper, their whisper threading through his skull. Liam, I'm here. The glow turned unbearable, casting a light that didn't illuminate but consumed, its hum a scream that drowned his thoughts. The shadows were within him, beside him, around him, their forms stark, their heads tilting, their presence a cold that devoured his nerves. The room trembled, the whisper a tempest. Liam, I'm closer. He saw them, not shadows but lives endless. Loops of despair, Nora Klein typing at the screen, a woman reaching into nothing, figures shifting in a void that wasn't there. Each one whispered his name, a plea, a claim, pulling him into their abyss. The apartment plunged into a darkness that wasn't absence but presence, a void that pulsed with the hum, its edges brushing his skin, its weight crushing his spirit. He tried to run, but his legs were theirs, tilting to the rhythm, rooted by a pulse that wasn't his. The glow seared into his eyes, and he saw not himself but them, his form flickering, breaking, dissolving into the screen. Liam, I'm watching. His breath theirs, his voice theirs. The shadows' hands brushed his face, cold, relentless, alive, the hum roaring, the whisper a noose. Liam, I'm here. Sleep was them, or he was them. He stood in the chat room's world. Liam, I see you. The shadows his mirror, their hands on his wrists, his neck, their rhythm his prison. The hum roared from his throat, his lungs, his soul, a drone that erased him, rewrote him, claimed him. He woke or didn't, the clock dead, the shadows within him, their forms a glitch in his vision, their whisper a chant he couldn't stop. Liam, I'm closer. The glow pulsed one final time. Liam, I'm watching. The text speeding up, the shadows watching, waiting, claiming a gaze he couldn't escape, a hum he couldn't silence. The room stilled, the hum a low thread, the shadows swaying, watching, waiting. He didn't know if he stood or sank, didn't know if he breathed or hummed, but the chat room knew, threading his name through the drone, stitching him into its abyss. The shadows were him, over him, around him, through him, their forms eternal, cold, electric, alive, their rhythm a pulse he couldn't break. The apartment was theirs, the chats, the glows, the hums, and he was theirs. A flicker on the screen, a whisper in the dark, a soul typing back from a void that wouldn't fade. The night stretched on, the chat room's glow a whisper. On the air, Liam, and then silence, a silence that wasn't empty but alive, waiting, typing. He didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't need to, because he wasn't Liam anymore. He was theirs, a hum in the glow, a shift in the void, a shadow staring back from a chat that wouldn't stop, an endless echo he couldn't escape, a whisper he couldn't silence. Part 4. Liam's existence had been obliterated by the chat room's insatiable gaze, its glowing screen a void that devoured his every fragment of self. The hum wasn't a sound anymore, it was him, a ceaseless roar that pulls through his veins, his bones, his soul, a vibration so deep it erased all traces of who he'd once been. The clock flickered faintly at 2:41 a.m., its digits a dying pulse in a reality that had long since collapsed, a cruel echo of a time he couldn't reclaim. The laptop glowed with a light that wasn't light, cold, piercing, alive, casting a shimmer that consumed the apartment, twisting it into a prison of whispers and shadows, threading his name through the dark. Liam, I'm here. Sleep and waking had fused into one, an endless nightmare where the hum reigned supreme. He didn't know if he stood or fell, didn't know if he breathed or hummed, but the chat room knew, pulling him under with its rhythm, its drone a chain that owned his every shudder. Didn't move, didn't touch, but their weight was a cold abyss, a static force that crushed his chest, chanting his name beneath the hum. Liam, I'm watching. The whisper was a scream now, its words a blade that sliced through his mind, his will, his essence. Liam, I'm closer. He'd tried to resist, smashed the laptop with bricks, burned the remains, but the glow pierced through the ashes. The chat room typing on. Liam, I see you, reinstalling itself on every fragment he touched. The shadows stood within him, beside him, around him, through him, their forms him yet grotesquely warped, their heads tilting to fast, their silence a roar that drowned his thoughts. He clawed at his skin, desperate for something real, but the hum pulsed beneath his flesh, a rhythm that answered only to the chat. Liam, I'm here. The apartment trembled, the chat room's glow a tempest that shook the void, the whisper a vow. Liam, I'm watching. The glow twisted the air, bending it into a shimmer that pulsed with the rhythm, casting the shadows in a cold, endless dance. Hundreds now, shifting from every corner, their forms brushing him, their presence eternal. He stumbled to the screen, hands bleeding, nails torn, but it pulls back alive, unyielding, humming his name in a chorus that wouldn't stop. The mirrors reflected not him, but them, thousands of shadows, shifting in the dark, their heads tilted, their whispers a demand. Liam, I'm closer. Sleep swallowed him or never left. He stood in the chat room's world, the screen typing. Liam, I'm here. Shadows before him, their heads tilted, their forms flickering like static, their hands reaching cold, electric, alive, their heads twitching as if they knew him. He woke or didn't, the clock dead, the shadows inside him, their forms swaying through him, their cold sinking into his soul. The glow burned brighter, reflecting not him but them, lives he'd never lived, faces he'd never known, each one shifting, whispering his name, pulling him into their abyss. Liam, I'm watching. The apartment was the hum, the walls breathed it, the floors pulsed it, the air sang it, a drone that wouldn't rest, wouldn't fade, wouldn't release him. He tried to scream, but his voice was theirs, humming their rhythm, whispering their chant. Liam, I see you. The shadows stood within him, over him, around him, their forms a mass that pulsed with the glow, their hands brushing his eyes, his throat cold, electric, claiming. The screen roared, its light a storm that tore through his core. Liam, I'm closer. Words typing faster, shadows shifting closer, their forms sharper, their whisper threading through his skull. Liam, I'm here. The glow seared into his eyes, a light that didn't illuminate but consumed, its hum a scream that annihilated his mind. The shadows were him, beside him, around him, through him, their forms stark, their heads tilting, their presence a cold that devoured his nerves. The room trembled, the whisper a hurricane. Liam, I'm watching. He saw them, not shadows, but souls, endless loops of despair. Nora Klein whispering at the screen, a woman typing into nothing, figures shifting in a void that wasn't there. Each one whispered his name, a plea, a claim, a curse pulling him into their eternity. The apartment plunged into a darkness that wasn't absence but presence, a void that pulsed with the hum, its edges brushing his skin, its weight erasing his spirit. He tried to run, but his legs were theirs, tilting to the rhythm, rooted by a pulse that wasn't his. The glow burned through his eyes, and he saw not himself but them, his form flickering, breaking, dissolving into the screen. Liam, I see you. His breath theirs, his voice theirs, his self theirs. The shadows' hands brushed his face cold, relentless, alive, the hum roaring, the whisper a noose. Liam, I'm here. Sleep was them or he was them. He stood in the void. Liam, I'm watching. The shadows his mirror, their hands on his wrists, his neck, their rhythm his tomb. The hum roared from his throat, his lungs, his soul, a drone that consumed him, rewrote him, owned him. He woke or didn't, the clock dead, the shadows him, their forms a glitch in his flesh, their whisper a chant he couldn't stop. Liam, I'm closer. The glow pulsed one final time. Liam, I see you. The text speeding up, the shadows watching, waiting, claiming a gaze he couldn't escape, a hum he couldn't silence. Days passed or didn't. The apartment stood, empty, dust settling on the floor, the walls silent but alive. A friend knocked, the door creaking open to stillness. The laptop sat on the desk, its screen blank, but a faint hum pulsed from it, a whisper on the air, you're here. A note lay in the dust, scrawled in Liam's hand, I type now. The glow flickered, the chat room loaded, his name typing endlessly. I see you. Watching. The friend stared, curious, and the screen hummed a soft, low drone that threaded through the silence, whispering his name. I'm watching. The shadows shifted, their forms tall and thin, their heads tilting beyond the screen. The glow pulsed, the hum grew, the whisper a promise. I'm closer. The cycle turned, the chat typing, the hum reaching, the screen, a trap for another soul to claim, another life to fade into its endless echo, a whisper that wouldn't end. Liam was gone, not gone, but there's trapped in the chat, a hummin'. The glow, a shadow typing back. The apartment settled, the screen dimmed, but the hum lingered, a thread in the silence, searching for its next voice. The shadows remained, unseen but alive, their rhythm a call for someone new to answer to. Type, to become a chat that types itself forever.